The wide receiver position is one of the toughest positions to start on a weekly basis for fantasy football. And it's because there's so many options, so many decent options out there here in 2019. But don't worry, we got you covered. We're coming at you with some wide receiver rankings to help you find those guys that are going to catch balls, not suck balls. What's going on, Headliner Nation? Jake, Fantasy Headliners. Hopefully you guys are all doing well out there. Welcome back to the Draft.com studios, where today we're talking wide receiver rankings here for week 2. We got the top 30 wide receivers, and obviously it's going to be who's remaining to play here this week, and no use in including the guys from Thursday Night Football because they've already played and they really don't mean anything going forward here rest of the week. So we got the top 30, and we're not going to waste a whole lot of time. We're going to get right into the rankings here right now. All right, kicking off our half-point PPR rankings, number 1 overall this weekend is going to be Julio Jones of the Atlanta Falcons going up against the Philadelphia Eagles at home in Atlanta. Now, Julio didn't blow the doors off anything in week 1, only had 6 catches for 31 yards, but saved it with a touchdown for a decent fantasy day. Everybody talks about Julio not scoring touchdowns. Hopefully this is a good sign to come that the touchdowns will be there, going up against a Philadelphia secondary, which at times looked very vulnerable last week against what we thought may be a poor passing attack of the Washington Redskins. Like Julio Jones this week, got him at number 1. Number 2 is going to be Michael Thomas of the New Orleans Saints going up against the Los Angeles Rams in what could very well be a very high-powered offense-driven game. And we know that Michael Thomas is the largest part of the passing game here in New Orleans. Last week, 13 targets, 10 receptions for 123 yards, no touchdowns, but it's Michael Thomas. The double-digit targets are going to be there in what could be an offensive shootout. Love Michael Thomas in week 2. Number 3 is going to be Keenan Allen. I love him for week 2, even though this is probably high for some people. Not for me. No Hunter Henry. Possibly no Mike Williams, who's going into the weekend questionable. And now they go to Detroit to face the Lions, whose offense looked improved last week, even though they were only playing the Arizona Cardinals. However, Matthew Stafford looked good. He looked a lot better than they did last year anyway. Kenny Golladay, Marvin Jones there. They're going to have to find some weapons here for the Chargers. Austin Eckler is going to get a lot of work, and Keenan Allen, another one of these guys who goes into every week anyway with double-digit target upside, could see a huge day. Last week, had 10 targets, 8 receptions for 123 yards and a touchdown. We don't have to sell Keenan Allen. The volume could definitely be there this week. He could see huge volume. Love Keenan Allen here in week 2. Got him as wide receiver 3. Number 4 is a wide receiver that a lot of people hated after week 1. Week 1 where he played one of the most difficult defenses in all of football, the Chicago Bears. I'm talking Davante Adams, and yes, he gets another difficult matchup this week. At least he's at home against the Minnesota Vikings. Now, Davante Adams, that touchdown upside is always going to be there. Last week, yes, only 4 receptions for 36 yards. Nothing to be excited about. And this is a very difficult match, but you can't sit Davante Adams. At no way on any week with any matchup do you sit Davante Adams. I trust the offense more in Green Bay, and I trust Aaron Rodgers more to get him involved. They're going to have to get something going through the air. Davante Adams, the biggest piece. I can see him force-fed the ball this week, trying to move the ball down the field. Davante Adams still going to be my wide receiver 4. Number 5 is going to be DeAndre Hopkins of the Houston Texans. A tough matchup with the Jacksonville Jaguars, where he'll probably draw a lot of coverage from Jalen Ramsey. But I don't hate DeAndre Hopkins this week. There's other people in this offense, other pass catchers, that really have the potential to pull away defensive attention. I'm talking about the Will Fullers, who are still healthy. Kiki Kuti looks like he may play this week. Kenny Stills, the new guy in town making big plays in week 1. He's going to be out there. There's a lot of options for the Houston Texans, and one person that I'm not going to count out for a big play, it's DeAndre Hopkins and the chemistry that he has with Deshaun Watson. Got him at wide receiver 5. Number 6 is going to be Amari Cooper, Dallas Cowboys going to Washington to face the Redskins. And the Redskins looked great for the first half of the ballgame last week, and then things kind of unraveled against the Eagles. But Amari Cooper, since going to Dallas, has been a force to be reckoned with. Last week, 6 receptions on 9 targets for 106 yards and a touchdown. Love the passing game of the Dallas Cowboys going forward. With Zeke in the backfield, defenders have to creep into the box to stop that running game. What does that do? That opens up more one-on-one coverage on the outside for Amari Cooper and Michael Gallup. Michael Gallup, another one of the main reasons why Cooper is being so successful in this offense. Gallup has taken a step forward. He's commanding more defensive attention. They can't just double-team Cooper every time because Michael Gallup will absolutely kill them. Amari Cooper in a positive matchup going up against the Redskins, like him a lot. Got him at wide receiver 6 this week. Number 7 is going to be Odell Beckham Jr., Cleveland Browns. A lot of people disappointed with his week 1 performance. However, He did have 7 receptions for 71 yards, so in a PPR league, not horrible. Not really an Odell-esque type of performance, but still not horrible. Now he goes up against the New York Jets, a New York Jets team who will not have Sam Darnold because he's got mono. So how great is that offense going to be in New York? I really expect Cleveland to try to right the ship this week and really get things back on track after that embarrassing loss to the Tennessee Titans last week where they absolutely got steamrolled. I still like Odell Beckham and this Cleveland Browns offense. I'm looking for them to take a step forward and bounce back. Got him at wide receiver 7. Number 8 is going to be Juju Smith-Schuster, one of the guys who we had to watch here throughout the week, but it sounds like he's going to be good to go with that toe injury. And now he gets to go up against the Seattle Seahawks, a Seattle Seahawks secondary that just gave up 418 yards passing to Andy Dalton and the Cincinnati Bengals. Hopefully the Steelers can right the ship this week, try to figure out that offense because it looked ugly at times last week. Look for them to rebound. Juju has a huge potential for a lot of volume this week in a secondary that showed vulnerable last week. Juju's number 8. Number 9, Adam Thielen of the Minnesota Vikings going into Green Bay against the Packers. And yes, it sounds like Stephon Diggs is going to be good to go. However, is he limited somewhat? Do they rely a little bit more on the passing game? The run defense of the Green Bay Packers is no joke. Not to say that Dalvin Cook's not going to find room to run. However, I do think that they throw the ball more in Minnesota this week than we saw last week. Adam Thielen could rack up the receptions this week. The big playability, that may be there for Diggs, but Thielen I think is the more safer option in a PPR-style league. Got him at wide receiver 9. Number 10, Sammy Watkins of the Kansas City Chiefs. And no, don't adjust your screens. It isn't 2014, but Sammy Watkins is once again fantasy relevant in Kansas City this week going up against the Oakland Raiders. With no Tyreek Hill there, Sammy could see some huge volume in arguably the best offense in the NFL. Last week saw 11 targets, which he turned into 9 receptions for a whole 198 yards and 3 touchdowns. Now, can we expect a repeat performance of that? No, probably not. However, this offense, you want a piece of it. Sammy Watkins needs to be in your starting lineups this week. I got him as wide receiver 10. Number 11 is Brandon Cooks, who really disappointed a lot of people in week 1, where he had a whole 2 catches for 39 yards. Thank you for nothing, Brandon Cooks. However, one thing that he does really well is produce against his former team, the New Orleans Saints. Doesn't matter when he was with New England or here in LA, the guy has always come back and played well against his former team. Now, this could be an offensive shootout where we see a lot of passing. Maybe Todd Gurley's still somewhat worked into the game. Maybe he doesn't see that heavy workload. A lot of people are very upset with Todd Gurley, but listen, you probably got him in the second round, and you're expecting production from what you saw last year. That's not going to happen. However, he was just short of 100 yards last week, and that was his first action of the entire season since he didn't play in the preseason. So he could see a little bit more action on the ground, which could help open up the passing weapons here for the Rams. They're going to have to continue to score to keep pace with the Saints. I expect a lot of points in this game. Brandon Cooks could break a big one. I got him at wide receiver 11. Number 12 is going to be Julian Edelman of the New England Patriots going down to Miami to play the Dolphins, who absolutely suck. I want everything to do with the offense of the New England Patriots in this game. Now, a lot of people are saying, yeah, but what about Antonio Brown? Doesn't sound like he's going to be on the commissioner's exempt list, so he will be able to play this week. But there's also reports saying that he hasn't quite picked up a whole lot of the playbook as of yet. It's Antonio Brown. I'm sure he'll be out there. But how many snaps, how many routes does he run? That's the question. The safest bet in this offense is going to be Julian Edelman. He's going to see the bulk of the targets. He's Tom Brady's favorite weapon, and I love him in a very good matchup against the Miami Dolphins. I have him as wide receiver 12. Number 13, Stephon Diggs, Minnesota Vikings, up against those Green Bay Packers in Green Bay. Kind of touched on him earlier when we were talking to Adam Thielen. The only reason he's a few spots lower, I see Diggsy as more of a big play potential in this offense, a little bit more reliant on those big plays. I think Thielen, especially in a PPR format, is a little bit safer just due to the volume that he could see. They may have to throw the ball more this week going up against the Green Bay Packers, and definitely somebody that would not surprise me, Stephon Diggs that is, to take the top off the defense at one point and break a big touchdown. However, if he doesn't get that big play, he may not produce as quite as well as Adam Thielen. Got him dropped down to wide receiver 13. Number 14 is going to be Robert Woods of the Rams going up against the Saints, and just another wide receiver in this matchup that we love. Like I said, we expect a lot of scoring hopefully in this game. Robert Woods, you can kind of fit him into that saying. There's death, there's taxes, and there's double-digit targets going towards Robert Woods. Last week, had 13 targets, 8 receptions, 70 yards, and is a PPR, weekly must start in a positive matchup going up against a New Orleans Saints team that cannot contain all 3 of the wide receivers of the Rams. He could be another safer play this week. The ceiling may not be huge because of the amount of other targets in that offense. However, safe bet, wide receiver 2, weekly basis, Robert Woods is now my wide receiver 14. Number 15 is going to be T.Y. Hilton going to Tennessee to face the Titans, who absolutely demolished the Browns last week, but there was still some success through the air, and T.Y. Hilton has that wide receiver 2 steady, floor on a weekly basis. A lot of people wrote him off when Andrew Luck retired and Jacoby Brissett came in under center. But don't. T.Y. Hilton is one big play away from saving your fantasy day. It's definitely something that helps him, on a week-by-week basis. He's not going to really be that guy that's going to go out there and catch 10 balls on a weekly basis. He's a little bit more reliant on that big play. The positive thing is he gets a lot of big plays. We saw it last week. We could see it again this week. Got him as a mid-wide receiver 2 right there, 15th overall. Number 16 is going to be Josh Gordon of the New England Patriots going up against those crappy Miami Dolphins. And, Josh Gordon didn't have a huge day last week against the Steelers, but they really didn't need him to. He only had 3 receptions, but turned it into 73 yards and a touchdown. And that's what he is in this offense, the big playmaker. We talked earlier with Edelman. The volume's going to Edelman. The big plays could be going towards Josh Gordon. The biggest question mark here, how much of a role does that Antonio Brown guy have in this offense this week? As of right now, though, Gordon has a more solid grasp on at least the target share coming into this week. Now, as the weeks progress, if Antonio Brown is on a football field, he will slowly take away some of that work from these guys. However, this week, they're still the top 2 options, Edelman and Gordon. Right now, Gordon got him at wide receiver 16. Number 17 is Tyler Boyd, Cincinnati Bengals, who had a decent week 1. He had 8 receptions for 60 yards, so in PPR leagues, not horrible. Wasn't a huge day like a lot of people were counting on, but now he gets a better matchup going up against the San Francisco 49ers. Now, we know Tyler Boyd's going to be the number 1 option in this offense. An offense that didn't look bad last week. Like I said earlier, Andy Dalton had 400-plus yards passing. Andy Dalton. I said Andy Dalton and the Bengals had 400 yards passing. I still like Tyler Boyd this week in a great matchup against the San Francisco 49ers. Got him at wide receiver 17. Number 18 is going to be Kenny Golladay of the Detroit Lions going up against the Los Angeles Chargers, a team that was vulnerable through the air at times last week against Jacoby Brissett and the Colts. Kenny Golladay had his week saved with a touchdown late, 4 receptions, 42 yards, and that touchdown. However, Matthew Stafford looks more healthy, and they're going to throw the ball still in Detroit. Kenny Golladay, the top target in this offense, maybe one of their top red zone threats, and definitely somebody who I will start on a weekly basis as a mid-wide receiver 2. Got him right there at wide receiver 18. Number 19, Allen Robinson, somebody who we've liked here throughout the offseason. Now he goes to Denver to face the Broncos. If there's any pass catcher in Chicago that I want, it's Allen Robinson. Like we've been talking about, another year removed from that ACL tear, another year in this offense, another year of chemistry with Mitch Trubisky. He's going to be their number 1 target, and I like him there in Chicago this week, going up against the Denver Broncos in Denver. Got him as wide receiver 19. Number 20 is going to be Cooper Kupp, the last of the 3-headed monster wide receivers of the Los Angeles Rams. And I love Cooper Kupp, and I am still in shock that the guy is out there playing at a high level when he just tore his ACL last November. Last week wasn't a huge game, though, 7 receptions, but for only 46 yards. He's going to continue to get those looks. He had 10 targets once again in his first game back. We've been talking about all the pieces in this game, all the possible offense. Cooper Kupp right there in that wide receiver 2 mix. Got him at wide receiver 20. Number 21 is Tyler Lockett, and this one needs an asterisk next to it. We need to pay attention to him going into the weekend. All signs pointing towards him playing. However, he's been dealing with a back issue, and if it wasn't for that big play last week, he would have got you a big fat 0. Only had 1 catch for 44 yards and a touchdown, but that's what Tyler Lockett is. He is a big playmaker. That's why we like him so much, because it doesn't take him a whole lot of volume to produce a solid fantasy day. The guy had 2 targets last week. 2, and he turned it into 11 fantasy points in PPR leagues. That's the type of wide receiver he is. Now he gets to go up against a Pittsburgh Steelers offense that was absolutely horrible last week, that they're going to be trying to get things back on track. And if they can, the Seattle Seahawks are going to be forced to throw the ball more through the air. Tyler Lockett, if healthy, always has that potential to get that big play. And now it looks like DK Metcalf can run a little bit more than just the go route like a lot of people thought. He'll command some defensive attention. If Tyler Lockett's 100% good to go, got him at wide receiver 21. 22 is another wide receiver who was saved by a late touchdown last week. It's Calvin Ridley of the Atlanta Falcons, had 4 receptions for 64 yards and a touchdown late, and now he gets the Philadelphia Eagles secondary. We talked about them when we talked about Julio Jones. They looked very vulnerable the first half of the game last week against what we thought would be a bad passing offense of the Washington Redskins. Calvin Ridley is going to be one of those guys who continually gets single coverage because a lot of people are always going to pay attention to Julio Jones, who is our number 1 wide receiver this week. Still like Calvin Ridley, just because the numbers weren't huge last week. Think on the positive note that at least that touchdown upside is still going to remain there for Calvin Ridley on a weekly basis. A decent matchup against a Philadelphia Eagles team that can score points. So if this gets into a shootout, going to like him even more. Calvin Ridley right now, wide receiver 22. Number 23 is John Brown of the Buffalo Bills, someone who we had as a start last week, and hopefully you did because the guy went crazy. Had 10 targets that he turned into 7 receptions, 123 yards, and a touchdown. He is the big playmaker for the Buffalo Bills. It is now his role, and he's produced in the NFL before. He's been around the league, and he's been hit or miss at times, but the guy has wide receiver 1 upside on a weekly basis. He struggled with health in the past, but he looks good now, and he's going up against a New York Giants team that should allow him the opportunity to get behind the defense. We know the arm of Josh Allen is huge. The speed of John Brown, the guy's name is Smoke for a reason. He can blow past the defensive coverage. The big playability will be there on a weekly basis as long as he's healthy. John Brown, wide receiver 23 this week. Another guy we had as a start last week, DeSean Jackson of the Philadelphia Eagles going up against the Atlanta Falcons. Huge week last week for DeSean Jackson. 8 receptions, 154 yards, and 2 touchdowns. That's kind of what he is, right? He is another one of these big play type of guys, and now he's reinvigorated his career. He's healthy. He's playing with Carson Wentz, and he really kind of is like a mold of his younger self. He still has elite speed, and he is a huge part of this offense. We were worried kind of going into the season that how much does he really see with the likes of Alshon Jeffery and the Zach Ertz and the newly drafted J.J. Arcega-Whiteside and Dallas Goedert? There's a lot of options here in Philadelphia. Well, they showed us in week 1, DeSean Jackson is going to be a huge part of the game plan. I expect it again this week. He's going to be a low-end wide receiver, too. I think defenses aren't going to sleep on him quite as much as maybe they did last week, but it's still a solid start here. DeSean Jackson got him a wide receiver 24. Number 25 is somebody who surprised a lot of people, at least the people who aren't a part of Headliner Nation, because we've been talking about Michael Gallup for a long time on this channel. We really thought that he took a huge step forward this season, and after 1 week, he's really starting to prove us right. 7 targets, 7 receptions, 158 yards. What's going to happen with Michael Gallup on a weekly basis? It's not really going to matter who they're playing against on the defensive side of the ball. Zeke Elliott in the backfield commands attention. Amari Cooper, a legit wide receiver 1 on the opposite side, just means that Michael Gallup, who's now in his 2nd year, is going to continue a breakout season. Love Michael Gallup. He's actually somebody who's trending up the rankings that could find himself in this mid-wide receiver 2. If he can have another solid week this week going up against the Washington Redskins. As of right now, though, Michael Gallup, wide receiver 25. Number 26, Tyrell Williams, the number 1 receiving option for the Oakland Raiders, going up against the Kansas City Chiefs. So we expect the Raiders to have to throw to keep pace in this game. Tyrell Williams last week had 6 receptions for 105 yards and a touchdown. However, he may be one of these guys that if he doesn't score that touchdown on a weekly basis, which we cannot count on, may disappoint you. Don't get overly excited to start Tyrell Williams. More than likely where you drafted him, he's your flex play. He's probably your wide receiver 4 or 5 on your roster. This is a great matchup for him. However, be cautious. Don't be, overexcited to start him just because they're playing against the Chiefs. The upside is there, but if the touchdown doesn't happen, you could be sorely disappointed. Right now, got him at wide receiver 26. Number 27 is Dede Westbrook, Jacksonville Jaguars, going up against the Houston Texans, a defense that looked very vulnerable last week at times through the air, even though they were playing against a Hall of Famer in Drew Brees. But Dede Westbrook, despite having Gardner Minshew as his quarterback now, is still somebody who's very viable, especially in PPR leagues. He had 5 receptions for only 30 yards, but did have that touchdown last week. He did have 8 targets, and that's a number that could climb throughout the season. He's another one of these guys that you can start late, maybe in these deeper leagues that you're looking for somebody with that potential for 10 targets a week. It's Dede Westbrook right now, got him at wide receiver 27. Number 28 is going to be Marquise Brown, and a lot of people want to just automatically throw this dude up into the top 10 after his week 1 performance, where he had 4 catches for 147 yards and 2 touchdowns. 2 touchdowns on 4 catches, averaged almost 37 yards a reception. That's not normal. However, It's another great matchup going up against the Arizona Cardinals this week, who are without their top 2 corners. They didn't look bad last week in Arizona, and we cannot bank on those huge plays every single week from Marquise Brown. He's not going to average 37 yards of reception the entire season. I love the upside of the kid, but I want to see him string together a couple games before I can just vault him up the rankings. Yes, the talent is there, the skill is there, the speed is there, and Lamar Jackson kind of looked like a pocket passing quarterback last week. However, don't overhype him too soon. Don't be too anxious to get him into your starting lineup and throw him in there as your wide receiver too. Let's see what happens here for a couple weeks. Maybe as a flex option here in week 2 in a great matchup, that's fine. Don't get overly ballsy with Marquise Brown, though. The talent is there, but let's see him string a couple together. Right now, wide receiver 28. Number 29 is going to be Antonio Brown because I just felt like he needed to be on this list. The problem with it, I don't know where to put him, to be completely honest. How many snaps does he see this week for the Patriots? Do they get out to a big lead? Pull him early. Just get him out there for a few routes and see what happens. That's entirely possible. However, what else is entirely possible? Maybe he only runs 4 routes a game. Maybe he turns 2 of them into touchdowns. You just don't know. And it's really a gamble here in week 2. If you're in a deeper league, you want to take a shot, you can throw him at your flex play. Listen, you didn't have him last week and you were fine more than likely. He's been a head case for weeks. You've probably lost all hope at this point maybe. But if you're looking for something huge, lightning in a bottle, you feel good. You feel like you've got a lottery ticket there. Antonio Brown is somebody we shouldn't forget about because if he suits up, if he plays, could be a huge part of this offense and a huge playmaker in this offense very, very quickly. He's wide receiver 29, but I just don't know where else to put him. Number 30 is going to be Alshon Jeffery, wide receiver, Philadelphia Eagles, playing against the Atlanta Falcons. Hopefully we can see some more offense in this game from the Falcons to keep the Eagles throwing the ball through the air. Last week, Alshon Jeffery, only 5 receptions for 49 yards, however, did have a touchdown. And that's what we can kind of look for from Alshon Jeffery. The huge target numbers, the huge reception numbers, they may not be there, but he does have the attention of Carson Wentz. As long as Carson Wentz is under center for the Philadelphia Eagles, Alshon Jeffery is going to be somebody he looks at on a snap-by-snap basis. The guy is part of the game plan, and he is a big part of that game plan. Don't forget about Alshon Jeffery. Am I overly high on him? No. Right now, have him as a wide receiver 3, as my wide receiver 30. All right, so those are my top 30 wide receivers here for week 2 fantasy football. Maybe there's some you agree with. Maybe there's some you disagree with. That's fine. If we always agreed on everything, you'd have no reason to watch the show. Don't forget, these ranking shows, these start-sit shows, whether it's myself or Kyle, their purpose is to supply perspective to help you make a decision. We're not telling you to do anything. It's your team. You make the decisions. We just try to make those decisions a little bit easier. So put it down in the comment section down below. Maybe you do have a change. Just be respectful about it. Would love to talk some fantasy football with as many of you as we possibly can. Greatly appreciate the support. The channel is absolutely exploding, and that's all because of you guys out there in Headliner Nation. Hopefully you guys have a great rest of your week, great weekend, and good luck week 2 of your fantasy football matchups.